Hey guys, I'm Young, a full-time dad and a full-time professional with the goal to become the best parent possible. The Girl Dad Show is my journey interviewing fellow working parents aspiring to be both good at work and parenting. I'm going to do this by gathering and sharing unfiltered perspectives from my guests, so join me as I research parenthood one interview at a time. Zucchinis? Give me the paper. Nice.
I love you, Texas.
All right, welcome here. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Young. This is great. I'm happy to be
Yeah.
here. I'm already a fan with my Girl Dad shirt on.
That is dope, man. I love that. Where'd you get that?
I think it was last Father's Day. I have two daughters. So I have an older one, she just turned 4, and the younger one just turned 1 within a few months of each other. And it was the younger one's first Father's Day with me. And so my wife did the work, but the kids get the credit.
No, I love it, man. That's fantastic. I don't even have a Girl Dad shirt just yet, but I'm actually in the process of making a bunch of these Girl Dad shirts. So I'll get you one for the show as well, and I'll make sure that you get another one so you can have more Girl Dad swag. But I love that because now I just know that you have two girls that are similar age as me, and I think that it's going to be a really fun episode to talk to you about that because we have so many similarities and we're like basically kind of in the same stream, both professionally and kind of personally. But I kind of want to jump right in before we get into any of the parenting stuff. Like, do you mind sharing with the listeners what you do for a living?
Yeah. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Maven. That's spelled Mayvenn. Maven is a hair extensions company. We have a digital platform, mostly serving Black women for their hair needs. We're talking weaves, wigs, extensions, clip-ins, basically the whole enchilada. And then most recently, we've opened up an offline store. We're in one Walmart in Houston right now, and the opportunity to really scale that. There's some interesting things happening. So I'm really excited, and I love it so far. I'm about 3 weeks in, and I'm loving it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you're like green, just wet around the ears in this new company, but you're already branching into retail distribution. That's really exciting.
We want to be where the customers are. We really care about serving our customers, our community, and that's what we care about. So we're going to go where they are, and we're going to serve them.
That's amazing, man. And then just so everyone has context, because I actually know this about you, but I think it's important that everyone understands just the volume of random and successful things that you've done in your career. Do you mind kind of just like sharing with the listeners and kind of like just the wide range of things that you've done in your professional career?
Sure. I'll do the quick version. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's more about parenting. The podcast is about parenting, but I do want them to understand that, like, like why I'm interviewing you and why it's like, it's like interesting to see people like, struggling with the same thing about like building this, career, but also trying to be a good parent,
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out relatively technical. I have a PhD in cryogenic physics from Georgia Tech. So super duper nerdy stuff. I was working on various space applications, worked very closely with NASA. I was actually traveling to different NASA centers, doing my experiments. I would work with my advisor back at Georgia Tech to do simulation and theoretical work. So I was like really into research and I actually really missed those days. It was a fun time, but it wasn't necessarily my calling. So eventually I went to NASA headquarters to serve in a policy role. It was in legislative affairs. So I literally sat between NASA as an agency and Congress as a whole. And I would do a lot of the liaisoning back and forth. We're talking like strategic plans, missions, budgets, hearings, things like that. So that was really cool. And the head of NASA at the time was Major Bolden, General Bolden, I should say. Sorry about that. General Charles Bolden. And on several occasions, I got to sit in the room with him and prep him for a hearing or go to Capitol Hill with him. And you know how they read those on C-SPAN? You might have seen they read from a little binder, whether it's a Secretary of State or whoever, they read from a binder as they're talking to Congress. I actually did work that went into that binder. Like it was my job to make sure that binder made sense and had things in there and all that. And then sometimes they kind of peek back and they ask questions to, some people in the shadows. I was in the shadows. So
That's
that
awesome.
was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So if I go back to C-SPAN, are there any cameos of you, like kind of in the background, like trying to like herd answers back and forth?
Maybe. I don't think I was in. I don't know. Maybe somebody could find me, or
That's
definitely
awesome.
somebody on my team.
The internet is forever, brother. The internet is forever. We'll find you. We'll find you.
And then I had the opportunity to go from there to work closely with President Obama. I was in the National Economic Council in the White House. There, the goal was to serve as a policy arm for the White House. So now I stayed in policy, but moved from science policy at NASA to economic policy at the White House. I think they were really looking for good. President Obama is all about diversity and inclusion and different perspectives and new ideas and innovation. So I had the opportunity to go there as sort of a thinker type. And I learned various things along the way around economic policy and who was there. We had some brilliant people on staff. So that was a really cool experience. My portfolio was around entrepreneurship and small business, really supporting sort of the backbone of America. Did that for a while as President Obama's second term was ending. I was like, maybe it's time for me to leave government. I don't know what's going to happen. So I left. I also wanted to make some money. And I ended up going to McKinsey. That moved me from DC to New York. I was in their, they call it the McKinsey Investment Office, basically their investment practice. Did that for a while. That was interesting. Good learnings there. Again, wasn't really my calling though. And then as I was sort of figuring out what to do next, I had the opportunity to work with Joel Spolsky, who's the founder of Stack Overflow. He also founded Trello and Glitch and a number of other things, but he's like an OG in the tech world. And I didn't really know him well at the time. And as I got the opportunity to work with him and travel with him and stuff, I realized the impact he's had on tech and how many fans he had and stuff like that. So it was really cool. And he was like a really cool mentor, challenged me to think about things in a different way. But it's really getting back to entrepreneurship and launching ideas and scaling stuff. So that was super interesting. So at Stack Overflow, I actually stayed there for quite a while and worked my way up to being the executive vice president of strategy and transformation. So yeah, I did that, but it's interesting. And I love the theme of this podcast because, I've had these great opportunities, but when I think back about where it all started, I mean, my parents immigrated over here, had like $20 in their pocket. I remember the apartment that, I was born in and grew up in was like sort of this 1-bedroom space. And it was like maybe 5 or 10 of us there at any given time, sleeping on the floor. My dad was delivering Domino's pizza, those were my roots. So we didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of love in the house. That was the thing. And coming from those roots and being able to see the hustle in my mom and the hustle in my dad and, them starting little side things here and side things there. I felt like I grew up with that entrepreneur gene embedded in me. And then it was cultivated because of the environment I was in. And then as my family marched into the middle class over almost 2 decades, maybe 1.5 decades, as they did that, they instilled a value of education in me, knowledge, working really hard, all those things. And then, it kind of just took off from there. So I'm really blessed to have those opportunities. They get 100% of the credit. If they didn't know, if I got stuck on a math problem, they didn't know how to solve it, they would ask whoever they could in the apartment buildings or whoever they're working with. Somebody was going to teach me this thing. And that told me to never say I can't do something or give up on something. And those fundamentals are what I've carried with me all along and what I hope to teach my girls.
Wow, that was awesome. I actually don't know if I've ever heard the full breadth of work. So that was really cool to hear. You like are a literal rocket scientist, or no, you're a cryogenic scientist, and then you went to law and legal and politics, and then to one of the most technical tech companies around. That's fantastic. So it's really cool too, because you landed in a company now 3 weeks ago that is also very, very different in true fashion. There seems to be a cycle here with your work choices. You just like a renaissance man. You're like looking for learnings and new things that you've never done before, because this is completely different than the other three things that you just like went through.
I think what I was really hoping to find was the kind of business model where you're trying to do something good and move the needle on, we're living in a time with so many major issues. You're talking about economic empowerment and climate change and so many things going on in the world. Can you make some progress in any one of those areas, but at the same time have a healthy, sustainable business, make some money, be able to provide for your family, all of those things? And the Maven business model is beautiful because the more we support our customers, so people that actually buy hair and need services, and the stylists that install the hair and maintain it, the more we support our stakeholders, the more money we're going to make. And the more money we make, the more we're able to support them. So the business model is beautiful. Like it's just kind of compounds the impact you can have, while at the same time being a scalable, high growth business.
So cool, man. I love hearing this story, because it's like, it's incredible the journey that you've taken. And I think in any one of those aspects of your professional journey, people would say that that's a huge accomplishment and success. And it's almost like you're like trying to overachieve and make everyone feel bad about what they do, because you literally have done it over and over and over again. And you're like yet again going into another sector or industry, and you're conquering it. So I love to hear that level of drive and ambition. And thank you for sharing this story about your parents and your upbringing, because I find that as I start to figure out who I am as a professional, and as I try to figure out how to grow my career, because I don't want to stop, right? I want to keep growing, and I want to keep learning, and I want to keep being better at what I do, and constantly like excelling, right? Like in growing that. And I keep coming into this contention with, being a good parent, because there's like very, very different skill sets that are needed for that, as well as like this conflation of like skills, values, all these other things that don't parlay necessarily perfectly over. And then the more direct aspect of time.
Right.
And it's been really, really hard for me. And I love that you started talking about your parents, because I'd love to actually talk a little bit more about that. I feel like as I get into this parenting thing, I start realizing how much more and more I sound like my mom and my dad. Have you realized that at all about yourself, or what have you gleaned about your upbringing? And
Yeah, it comes up, this whole idea, like, definitely. Let me say that. It's when I'm doing something like having breakfast with my daughter or helping her brush her teeth or something like that, I'm catching myself going, come on, go faster. Come on, we got to do the next thing. You're taking too long. And I'm just hearing my parents saying that to me. Now, it's a little different because my dad worked daytime, my mom worked nighttime, or vice versa at any given point in time. So like you're on a fixed schedule. And I live in this world where, and I'm fortunate enough to work at a place where it's flexible, and we're trying to be cognizant of like work-life balance and all those things. So I have a flexibility that my parents never had. But I'm still finding myself doing the same thing. So that's probably like how to stick to a schedule and a routine is probably the number one thing that I can see in myself that my parents were trying to do to me. And I think my wife would say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what do your parents think about your progression of work? Like, I mean, it's gotta be like confusing for them.
Yeah.
Like just like the jumps that you've made and like, how do you talk to me about that?
They're really proud. I mean, they never thought that they would financially be in the position they are, and they're like regular middle class family, right? But they never could imagine that, coming over from India and coming to this country. They didn't know the language, nothing. And so they always said their success is like educating me and my brother, us having good jobs, getting married and having grandchildren for them, right? Like those are the things that they really value. So when my parents see me moving up in my career, I mean, they're super proud. I think the proudest moment, though, was a couple of years ago. I got the opportunity to bring my family in to meet President Obama.
Oh,
And
man.
I remember when my mom was entering the West Wing and we entered his office and she like was face to face with him. And
Oh,
she
wow.
was so overcome with emotion because I know where she came from. I visited India and saw where she came from, where she is today. And when she was in that moment, she just looked at him and he did his whole thing and he's very social and great.
Yeah, he has so much swag. Yeah, he's like so cool. Yeah.
At the end, you know what happened? He paused and my mom goes, "Mr. President, can I ask you something?" And my face went, me, my brother, what's she gonna say? And she goes, "Can I give you a hug?"
Oh my gosh.
He looks right back at her and just smiles and says, "Even presidents need hugs sometimes." And he gives her a huge hug. And
Oh my
it was
gosh.
such a beautiful moment. I think that must have been like really, really special for her. In terms of like career stuff, probably the most memorable thing.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing story. Holy cow. That's incredible. Like, and I mean, I'm going to bring the race thing in a little bit into it, but like, you know how like, Asian parents love to brag about their kids. I mean, you have the ultimate, like your parents have the ultimate right there. They just like went from immigrating over here to meeting the president of the United States. Jeez Louise, man. Save some for the rest of us. Goodness gracious. That's an insane accomplishment. That's great. How do you think that having kids has like changed your mindset about work though, based on the fact that like you now have kids? What is the main differences that you found in yourself and how it parlays into work? Or is there no difference?
Oh, there's definitely a difference. I would like to say, like, I guess because of how I grew up, there was always this element of like having street smarts. And then when you enter the workforce and especially on the leadership level, you call it EQ, right?
Yeah.
I know there's some differences there, but essentially that Venn diagram overlaps heavily. And I think good leaders have really good EQ, but in your home life, when you're constantly managing that EQ because of children and talking to them on sort of their level, inspiring them, working with them, but also like observing them and learning from them as well and what they could teach you about life. If you could carry that into your EQ funnel, I think it actually makes you a much, much stronger leader. Not to say like time is, how do you spend your time? If I'm gonna leave my children to go do this work thing for money, I want to make sure I'm doing the best job I can. I'm happy doing it. They can look at me and be see some pride in what I'm working on. And that's why I think it's so important to, my resume looks like I jumped around a lot, but really I was just trying to find myself and find, where I'm going. And to some degree, I'm extremely happy. It's still a question mark if I found myself. You never know until, that's a lagging indicator. But that's what I think it's all about. And I think that, having children really grounds you that way, helps you understand people better, really builds up that EQ to a level that you couldn't think possible before kids. And then how you use your time and making it as valuable as possible.
That's wild. So you think having kids has actually made you a better leader? It's actually increased your EQ, and you think EQ is like one of the major components of being a good leader. So in essence, the kids have made you a good leader, a better leader.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about it though? Because I mean, I believe you to a certain degree, but there's a part of me that needs to understand this a little better, because I feel like it's so hard to like apply the same level of like EQ to my young kids. And I can talk to you about this because you have the same age kids as me. They don't understand what I'm saying. You know what I mean? And like, you have to get down to their level, and it's like a huge amount of patience and there's a huge amount of like directness that you have to like play with them. Even play is very, very direct. It's like, hey, we're going to do tag, or we're going to play this house, and then we're going to do a make believe. And like, it's very, very direct. And like, when you're a leader, you're always trying to figure out like the balance of like inspiration versus directing. Right. And so it's fascinating to me here that it's fascinating for me to hear that you think that it actually improves your EQ.
I think a lot of it also comes down to communication. If you're a leader and you're sitting in the office and looking at spreadsheets and in meetings all day, and you're meeting with an individual contributor that's like doing a lot of the grind and the hard work, for you to articulate what you're saying to the individual contributor audience, you have to meet them on their level to some degree. And if you want to grow them and do career development and stuff like that, you have to grow them from where they are, some baseline and with some vision in mind. And in some ways, that parallels parenting. You know, your kids are at some level. You know, in some cases it's physical, some cases emotional, depending on the age of your kids. But you got to meet them where they are, understand where they are, have the patience at times to deal with them where they are, and then really work with them and grow them together. It's very, in my mind, it's very analogous to how you would lead a team. And not to mention, I mean, there's things you have to do. Like, you got to feed your kids. You got to make sure they sleep. You got to make sure they shower, all those kinds of things. And then there's the things that you really want to do. You want to expose them to different activities and stuff. You want them to learn a lot, right? If they could learn multiple languages or they could learn faster, whatever it is, you want to expose them to that. Similarly, if you're running a team or running a company, you got some things you have to do. Like, you have to set expectations and you have to give feedback and you have to have goals. But at the same time, you want them to accomplish the goals, right? And so you have to work with them and you have to grow them. And development is like key to success.
That's wild, man. I love that. I love that. That makes a lot more sense now. So, I mean, it's like taking the opportunity of like, so I guess what I was saying was I wasn't thinking about it deep enough, because I was saying like, well, the level of depth I'm going to this is not the same as doing it at work. But you're saying it's the concept of having the exercise of going to the person's situation. And the kid is just a deeper situation. So I was separating the two things, but you're saying, no, it's the same idea. Meet the people where they're at to be a good servant leader.
I think so. And I think it's hard to imagine unless you really sit there and think about it, because on the surface, it's like two different worlds.
Yeah, totally.
If you were able to take like a snapshot of how you were pre-kids and how you talked to people and thought about different things and how you communicated and all those things, and then post-kids, I bet you there's a massive difference there.
Oh, I can already tell you, yes, absolutely there's a massive difference here. My judgment on people is decreased significantly. My EQ is definitely much higher, right? Like, I have so much less judgment. I didn't even realize I was so judgmental until I had kids, and now I'm like so beaten up emotionally and physically that like I don't judge anybody anymore at all. Like, because I just like, they must have kids or they must be around kids and they're just tired. Like, I just have this higher level of empathy for people now that I have kids, because I just like, it's such a onerous task, you know, to be a parent or to be a good parent, right? If you want that responsibility of being a good parent. So yes, I completely agree with you. It's a complete different change. So you're right. My EQ has gone up. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for letting me see that. What were you going to say? Sorry, I cut you off.
I would also say your entrepreneurial side or your hustle side and how you think about the world, a lot of that has probably changed too. And it's like, who are you surrounded by? Well, when you see your kids like taking their first steps, or they're in a room full of, you know, you get them a new toy, you open the box and they're trying to play with the box more than the toy. And you're like, how does this make sense? But they're literally, no pun intended, or maybe intended, they're thinking outside of the box, right? I'm watching creativity at its finest, you know, and that's what you need. You need to be surrounded by people that think differently, and who's better than that than your own kids that are learning, you know, the basics of life right in front of you.
That's amazing. Dude, I love it. And I also love that you said something that I've never actually heard before. You're like, oh, what can I learn from them during this process? And it's actually a really interesting point, because it kind of goes back to the whole like concept of like good mentorship. Have you ever heard of that terminology? Good mentorship is never a one-way streak. It's actually a two-way streak.
Two-way streak, right?
Yeah. And so you're applying that same concept and methodology that people also have a hard time grasping to something that's even never been compared to before, but at least by me, that you're also learning from your kids. Because that's actually a really good point. It's like taking each opportunity to learn something and think about things in a different way. And yeah, who knows? I mean, like my kid might be, you know, bigger, better, more successful or more accomplished than I am, like you were for your parents, right? And so like that could be the reality. And that's a really good point. Man, I hope I don't like mess up my kids. Jeez Louise. Now I'm like nervous.
I'm sure you're a good dad. I'm sure you're a great dad, actually. Great dad.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you, man. I definitely am trying really hard, right? Like I take it pretty seriously, probably too seriously. I'm taking it so seriously that I started a podcast about it just to like research how other parents are doing it. But yeah, so I definitely care a lot, and I definitely want to do a good job being the best dad that I can be. And I think that it's like super interesting the way that you're conceptualizing parenthood. So how do you qualify success? Like just to like get more direct about it. What do you think a successful parent is at this stage in your life?
I think to some degree it's like happiness or joy, right? I think there's a tendency for some parents to over-index their kids on like career success, or in other ways financial success, or in other ways maybe like if you get married and have kids, you're successful, right? And the way I like to think about it is kind of like the life portfolio, right? Like maybe not any one of these things will completely make you happy, but the combination of a bunch of different, just like you make a financial portfolio and you diversify, I think you got to live life that way too. You know, your work is part of it, your family's part of it, your friends, your hobbies, all these different things that you do are part of that life portfolio. And I think happiness is kind of like managing that emotion through that portfolio. So it's kind of like the thing you're optimizing for to some degree, but the best way to optimize it is actually just manage it. So I think on a high level, I would say if you're happy, you're living your life, you're not like, you know, you set some goals out, you're accomplishing them, you know, you're just full of joy. I think that's what any parent would want for their kids. And to the degree it's holistic and your life portfolio is doing well, and that's the thing driving happiness, that's a sustainable way to maintain it long term. It's not tied to one individual thing, but really this holistic approach to life. So I think that's the answer. But to be honest with you, I have no idea. I don't know what it means. You're always going to be a parent when you have kids. But the degree at which you're involved in their growth and, you know, you're kind of working yourself out of a job. You want to build them up so they're self-sustainable. And then maybe you start entering that phase of you could be a parent, but also a friend when the time comes. You could be a parent, but also a mentor, right? Like you're viewing it differently. So I hope that I equip my girls with as many tools and as much knowledge and stuff as possible. So when they're in a situation and they really need to make a decision, they're not really reliant on calling me or my wife. They could figure it out. And I think that's what's going to make me really proud, that they could really figure it out. And they're doing that in order to optimize for their own happiness. So that's what I could hope for, you know?
Wow. That's a really good barometer of success. That's amazing. And it's really, really specific. And you've actually thought about this. You've thought through this a little bit. I know it's like a tough question, but it sounds like you actually have been pondering this.
Well, it's one of those things you think about at 3 a.m. when they won't go to sleep. You just walk in hallways and patting their backs. And, you know, it's like you really think almost existentially about all of these things and life in general. So maybe some of that came up, but I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. That's the truth.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that too, right? And it's like, it's so funny because like, I think I said this earlier too, but like, every year I get older, I realize the less I know, you know, and it's just like you keep like realizing that like in your youth, you have this like unbelievable confidence in how the world is and what the world looks like. And then you get older and older and you're just like, God, I don't know anything. And you're like, oh my God, I know less even about stuff. And then I have kids and then my judgment decreases. And now like I'm like too tired to even care and have an opinion. And so like everything just seems much more muted, you know, and you're just like much more open to just accepting the fact that, you know, you're just a much smaller piece in a much bigger and complex world. And yeah, it's really funny to say that, but it also doesn't stop me from trying to figure out what the best thing is. And it kind of goes back to this thing of like, do you set the example for your kids by being a certain way, you know, or like, you know, showing them like what kind of person you want them to be. It's like the whole nature nurture thing, right? Like,
right.
Like, do you enact that, or do you, or are you actually like just directing it? Because like, I think that I learned a lot from so I'll give you some examples. Like like I grew up in, in a fairly, traditional Korean family that, first generation immigrated over here. Very similar story to you, actually, humble beginnings, all that good stuff. And we didn't have as many luxuries in the beginning, right, to like actually do extracurriculars or learn things. But inevitably, when we did, we were immediately put into piano. And I'm Korean, so we did taekwondo. We had to do that, like the standard stuff that you have to do all these like specific things. But then like, in the middle school and high school, like my parents were very like open-ended about it. So it'd be a lot less nurture and much more nature, where they're like, yeah, if you're interested in something, let's go explore it. And so I chose music, and I ended up learning like a handful of different instruments, and my parents just paid for it. They're like, yeah, it's a good investment. And I know it was expensive, but it's like an interesting balance between like what you're doing and what that's going to mean for their life, right? How much do you control that and how much you don't? How are you handling that, especially with your 4-year-old, as I'm sure she's starting to like do what my 4-year-old is doing, is starting to like understand herself and wanting to show interest in different activities.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. I think exposure at this age is probably exposure to a lot of different things. And then if I recognize that she has an interest or she wants to go deeper in a particular area, fortunately, I'm in a position where if she wanted to get more into the music thing, let's get her a couple instruments. And, there's great stuff on YouTube. But in this COVID environment, our traveling and stuff like that is really taking a hit. So what could we do at home or around home where we could cultivate some of those interests? Maybe as they grow older, at some point the exposure thing moves into, they're really honing in on some specifics, similar to what you said. Maybe your parents' strategy was good, like expose them to everything, and then when he or she gets old enough, let's support that, right? So I think that's a good way of doing it. But I know at this age, like I haven't quite crossed that bridge yet, but at this age, I'm trying my best to do as much exposure as possible.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the other polarity for me is that like my wife and I want different things from our kids. Like I want them to play music because I have like this secret desire. Right. It's not that secret. It's actually pretty public. I want them to play music with me, and I want to be a YouTube sensation singing songs with my 2 beautiful girls. But I don't know. I'm making facetious jokes. But my wife wants them to say again. What's up? Thank you. I appreciate it. It'll just be you. But I'll still appreciate it. And I'll be like, thanks, brother. And my wife, wants them to be outdoorsy. She loves the outdoors. She loves to garden and she loves sports. And so like she wants them to be athletic and be outdoors. And yeah, I'm okay with that as well, too, if that's what they want. I just feel like, there's certain things that I feel like we're going to be able to learn and do well in. And there's certain things that people are naturally going to be successful in. Like, I think we're all unique and different in that way. And I think that finding what you're naturally good at is going to be very helpful for you to be more successful. Like, for example, there's things that you have to work incredibly hard at to be moderately good at. And there's things that you could just like kind of half-ass and still be like in the top tier, top 10%. And it's like I feel like being a successful business person is all about finding that out about yourself and experiencing as many things as you possibly can to figure out what that thing is, where, you don't have to like try hard to be in the top. And so if you actually try hard on those things that you're naturally good at, you'll literally just like catapult yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Do you agree with that concept of like doubling down on your strengths and figuring out what your strengths are and your passions are in the work growth?
Yeah, I think I generally agree with that. It reminds me of like SAT time when they're like, I was a little stronger at math than I was on the verbal. And, and it's like, no matter what I do, my verbal score wasn't really going up significantly. But if I focus on the math score, I could at least nail that, and not make any dumb mistakes or something like that. Nail that, and then just do the best I can on verbal. And maybe that combination would be a high enough overall score. So that was my strategy there. And I think inherently I was trying to go for what you're saying. Like, when you can recognize those strengths and you have the ability to like really boost that, it will catapult you. Not to say you shouldn't work on weaknesses and stuff like that, but it's like, where do you want to spend your time? And what brings you that happiness? I think a real struggle would be like, if you're really good at something, but you really hate doing it.
That's right.
I don't know what you do.
That's right. That's right. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think I've actually had those moments like once or twice in my life, which is probably why I have so many jobs as well, like you as well, right? My concern here is this, and this is probably going to sound very evil of me as a parent. And I hope that none of the parents will judge me. Actually, I think the non-parents will judge me more than the parents will. I worry that my kids are not going to be athletic. Does that make sense? And I'm pretty sure that if they have my genes, they're going to be much more in tune with math and like naturally good at it. Like I just know it, and I can already like kind of see it. Like you know what I mean? Like the way my oldest calculates very quickly, and she can process information a lot faster. And my younger one's not quite as quick, you know, but my older one is a lot like quicker, and you can like tell, you know. And so like I don't know how to say it, but like to my wife, but I'm like pretty sure we need to like do something that's like steeped in like math, you know, and so that she can excel in it naturally, which would be, you know, music would be a great one, because music, if you break down the composition of music and, you know, the anatomy of it, so to speak, it's really mathematical.
Yeah.
And you can break it down into math sequences, and obviously there's art behind it on top of it, but the foundational layers of it is very mathematical. And so I feel like she has an inclination for it. She has an interest for it. And and this is me like totally like dictating her passion in life, but I just like feel like she's just going to excel at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then I fight with myself all the time. Cause I'm like, my wife wants her to play like baseball or like, I'm like, first off, like what is she going to do with baseball? There's like not even a good women's like softball league. Like, I don't get it. Like, is that even going to be a career? So it'll just be a hobby that we spend time and money. It's like, I don't know, maybe I'm being too Asian and like long-term, like it could just be fun and passion, you know? But like, I don't even see the end in that. Like, what's the end point for that? Right. And then for me, I'm like, at least with music, even if she doesn't become a professional musician, it's something that you can always do.
Right. Right.
You know, no one's ever going to be like, oh, you play piano? Ugh. You know, they're going to be like, oh, that's awesome. Right. You know, regardless of whatever you do. Right.
Right.
And so anyways, that's me like hedging bets and kind of like a little bit of a dictator to my kids.
I don't know. I think expose them to everything and see where they go. Right. Because some things you don't have to do for some like end game. Right. You just do it for fun. If shooting hoops is something that, you know, she just enjoys to blow some steam off and helps manage some stress and stuff like that, that's a great way to have an activity that does that. And then if she were to go and do some other activity that is more consistent with a life goal, like she can be better at it because she blew off some steam. And maybe music is the outlet, or maybe baseball is the outlet, or whatever it is. Maybe it's neither of those things, and she has a whole third dimension that you don't even know about.
That's right. That's right. No, I know. That's what I mean. This is the conundrum, man. This is the conundrum. This is why I get stressed out, because I'm like, crap. I'm like literally impacting this kid's life, you know, just by existing. And I'm like so like laissez-faire about it when I need to like think about like, hey, like I got to be more gracious and empathetic and open to this, right? And just like be okay with like them figuring out who they are. And so I'm admitting it. I'm telling you that I'm struggling with this. Yeah.
One of the things I've tried to do is like loosen up a little bit on so there may be some things that I want her to do, or a way I want her to do it, or whatever. And my wife has something, but what I'm trying to do is loosen up on that kind of thinking and just seeing what she wants to do. So for example, if we go out and get the mail and say it rained yesterday and there's a puddle of water, I know she wants to jump in that puddle of water.
Yeah.
Like, no. And I also know, so one side of me knows that. I'm like, it would be so much fun for her. The other side of me is like, oh my God, it's going to take me an hour to get you showered and ready, and bedtime is coming up, and, you know, dinner's coming up and all that stuff. And what I'm trying to do is be a little bit more flexible there and just say, you know what, I'll do the extra work. Just go explore that. Go see the impact of your jump on this puddle of water and how it makes the water fly. And maybe I can make a connection between that and like something in physics, or something in, you know, whatever, weather, or, you know, why is the rain? Does the sun not come there? Why does the backyard have sun and the front yard doesn't? You know, like maybe there's ways to like tie stuff in that's just like, but it's from their little point of view where they want to have fun in their own way. Again, not for an end game, but just from an exposure and curiosity thing. Like, let's go deeper into whatever you're thinking about.
Holy dude. That's where you went with that? I thought you were going somewhere else. That's amazing. You would try to take the parallel of jumping in a puddle and try to figure out a way to teach them like science? That's incredible. That's amazing.
I don't think kids care about like math. Like right now, if I tell my daughter what's 3 plus 2, she might not. She'll like count or whatever. But if I have 3 cookies and I have 2 cookies, how many total? She knows it like it reminds me of Kevin from The Office. Like he can do complicated math in terms of pies or cakes, but when it comes to just raw numbers, it's like that kind of thing. Okay, let's explore it that way.
Yeah, find the motivation, and you're like basically that goes back to the same thing you said at the very beginning. It's all about EQ because you're meeting them where they're at. You're finding their motivation and then showing them new things through that model. And I totally know what you mean. I know what you mean about the cookie thing too. We do cookies as well. Like we count the cookies. It's like amazing. Yeah, it's like so much better than just doing math. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. So cool. So. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so do you have a favorite?
No. That's an awesome question. I don't have a favorite. No, I have things that I like to do more with one over the other, but I don't have like a favorite. But it's also probably related to age and stuff like that too. So with my older daughter, like I can actually talk to her and we can, have conversations and we can do imaginary like games and stuff like that. Whereas with the younger one who's just now learning how to walk and put words together, I just love like in a playful way, just like tackling her and hugging her and, like doing that kind of fun. So it's but with my older daughter, I did that when she was that age. So I think it's just like based on where they are in life, different things. But no, man, I don't have a favorite one. You don't have your own either. Come on.
I honestly, it's so funny and so evil, but like up until about last year, I think I did. I may not openly admit it, but now I guess I just did in this very, very open public setting. But up until last year, I totally did, right? Like, and then now obviously I'm bonding with my second, so it's like, much better. But like, I feel like guys, especially dads, have such a hard time bonding with their kids the first year and a half, almost 2 years of the first, they're like so mom dependent. And I mean, I don't know if you did breastfeeding or not, but like, even when we were doing the bottle, it was like, it wasn't the same. They really needed, it wasn't that connection. And I think it's also because like maybe it's me too, or maybe it's just guys in general, like the stereotypical guy, but like we need more like call and response where they just like, they're just so needy. I sound like I'm complaining. At that age, they just want, and they need. And like, there's no reciprocation where at least when they're like 3 and 4, like my 3 and 4 year, like we're like bantering, we're having fun. There's like a give and take. And it's like fun, but like, I'm just terrible at like reading what I'm supposed to like know what they want. Do you know what I'm saying?
It is true. Like at a younger age, when they're first born and they're newborns and stuff, the mom is like, maybe the mom is always more important, but definitely way more important in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think there's data that suggests like there's still bonding that happens with the dad and stuff. So definitely, guys, take your parental leave. But you're right, like the over indexing on the mom. So at that time, like I was more with my older daughter because my wife had to balance a lot of that, and she had to be kind of around the clock as she was nursing the younger one. So that's for sure. And then over time, as they reach a certain age, they're able to like do more things.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, so maybe where you spend your time or the type of things you do, but from a love perspective, I know you love both. I know I love both of them. Yeah. It's just a funny thing because I'm like, because you have the same dynamic as me, so I just wanted to know if it was any kind of parallels in that. The other question that I'm not asking anybody else that I want to ask you because you have 2 girls same age as me. Have you noticed that like it's very challenging, like you're like the most popular person in the room, like everyone loves you like 1 minute and then literally an hour later like everyone's mad at each other and everyone hates you? Have you noticed that? Oh yeah, absolutely
like wife included. Like I have no idea, like They're all the girls turn against you. Like, I don't know out of nowhere. Have you had that?
The wife was doing that before kids, so
Okay, got it. So that didn't matter.
there's nothing has changed there.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. That's fair. Actually, now that I think about it in hindsight, I think that's the same for me too. Yeah.
It brings up an interesting point. It's like, let's not take life too seriously. Like sometimes when I see my daughter, right, and she's in 1 minute she could have like maybe a tantrum, or she's crying about something, or she's really upset about something that means the world to her, and for us it's like like the cartoon wasn't on, or like what was the problem, right? But in a second they can move from that emotional state to like laughing and happy and playful and all that, and it just goes to tell you that they're like kind of to some degree, you know, they're still developing their emotional maturity, but to another degree I think adults have this thing where like they get too emotionally invested in something and they get stuck in sadness or anger or whatever, and they can't get out of it. And they're able to pivot, like kids are able to pivot so quickly. It's amazing. So that's actually like a big lesson I learned from them. Like, I'm in control of my own happiness. If I'm feeling sad, I should not dive deeper in it or explore it. Maybe there's some degree of healthiness to that. But at some point, you got to get out of it. And matter of fact, the faster you process through it and you get out of it, the quicker you'll move into this happiness phase. And you can literally see that experiment right in front of you with your kids. And then the second underlying, more foundational layer is like, just don't take life that seriously. It's not that important. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You know, it's like specs. Like the more you know, the less you realize you actually know. And
that's right.
You know, it's like, so I don't know. I
love that, man. I love it. Like, so cerebral about this. It's like so incredibly fun to interview you, because I think like you're very similar to how I'm tackling it. You take it like you're treating it like a business venture or like some sort of like new venture, and you like want to excel at it. And so that's the same thing I do. I like look at it from a macro, I look at it from a mid, I look at it from a micro. I ask other people. Like, this whole concept of even this podcast is so that I can like research how other people think about it. But it's really fun. But you take it like really far. You really like think through like the macro of it all, like philosophically. It's very interesting. And I love how you like are compounding like these kind of macro level thoughts with the micro, but also like just, it's almost like you're trying to figure out the middle. Like you're equalizing it. You're constantly trying to equalize it. Like you're creating like like the diversified value. That's what you just said, right? Earlier, diversifying your life and then trying to instill that into your kids. It's very good. I just heard your 10-minute notifier. So let's get you on the last 4 questions and get you out of here, because I know you're a busy man. Okay. Thank you for doing this. So let me fire off these last 4 questions and I'll let you get out of here. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm asking these 4 questions to everybody I interview. So I'm hoping that this will create some symmetry to all the listeners that are listening to this and across different interviews. Okay. So I'm going to fire them off. What advice do you have for other parents or soon-to-be parents?
Soon-to-be parents, enjoy the time you have together now, because as soon as kids come, everything changes. In a good way, mostly a good way. But enjoy like the boring things you do now, like watching movies or whatever. Just do it, because it's going to be so hard to do it later. And then existing parents, just like play with your kids. Like just take a time out and get on the ground and just play with them. Do what they want, play Candyland or play kitchen or you know, whatever it is that they like to play. Like, just do it and be 100% in it. Not only is it good for your kids, but it's good for you. You'll find another source of happiness, I think. It really connects you with your kids in a different way. So just get into it and play with them.
Amazing. I love both of those answers. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids, what would it be?
The value of patience. I've not been a very patient person for a lot of my life, and I've had to develop that skill over time. And, you know, the things that the mother goes through, especially during pregnancy and afterwards, and when the baby's here, and then the first, 6 months to a year, like just have some patience there and understand, like, you don't know everything. So just accept that you don't know what you don't know. And as a result, just have some patience, be a little bit more thoughtful, and just be cool. Like, don't like rush to judgment or get upset and all those things. Just check your emotions a little bit and be cool. That's more for, I guess, the dads, but you know, that's what I would tell myself if I went back in time. Just chill out a little bit.
Cool. My last question for you is, what's the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself about parenting?
Just, I guess, like the things that I thought brought me joy actually didn't to this degree. Like, it's weird to say. Obviously, I love my wife and my family and my friends and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't know I could love someone or something so much until my daughter was born. My first daughter was born, and just immediately the emotion that hits you is like, oh my God. And I didn't even know what that was. Like that parental love, you know, that was a game changer. There's nobody that could have ever prepared me for that or described it to me. Like that was the thing that I learned about myself. Just to have that was crazy. That was really crazy. And it probably opened up all this other stuff. If you interviewed me years ago, I don't know.
A monster, just a pure monster. Yeah, hard as a rock, sharp as a knife, right? Oh man, Mihir, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me about parenting and just your life in general, man. That was really, really great, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, brother. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Girl Dad Show. We really hope you enjoyed that interview, and as always, please take a moment to review, rate, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.